Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to go over a tutorial of how to play this song Driving Wheel by Al Green off the Al Green Gets Next to You record. The guitars on this record were recorded, I believe, by Teeny Hodges. The song is in D major and it's a really fun, dancey tune that can get you really familiar with, once again, alternate picking or hybrid picking. If you're trying to work on that, there's a few different positions you can play the main riff in, and there's really only a couple chords you need to know to play guitar in this song. And we'll also go over how you can transpose the horn lines into a guitar line if you wanted to take that opportunity to maybe substitute guitar for horns if a horn player is maybe difficult to come by in your area. So without further ado, let's dig into how to start the intro riff. All right, so the intro section is really, I believe, the part of the song that makes this worth learning. It's a fun, bouncy, dancey little riff that makes great use of the open strings and is primarily in the higher register on the guitar. So to start this riff, what we're gonna do is on the G string, that is your third from highest string here, we are going to slide up from the 2nd fret to the 4th fret. Now, if you're familiar with your guitar, you may be wondering why we're not just starting with an open B string, as these are octaves. But there's something to be said about the stylistic choice of making that slide that really sets the tone for the riff. The next note after that, and the reason why I'm sliding with my 2nd finger here, is that I'm going to grab for the 3rd fret on the B string. So if I start with my 2nd finger, my 1st finger is in the perfect position to grab that note. So those first two notes will sound like this. After that, we're going to go back to that B, which is our 2nd finger on the 4th fret of the G string. So we'll go. Now here's where you can play it differently. The next note is going to be an E. So in this position, you can play your pinky finger or 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the B string. Messed up a little bit there. Or you can do what I prefer, which is to use your 2nd finger of your picking hand and do a hybrid approach and pull the open E string, which is that string right there. Here's what that sounds like. I like how the notes ring out. I think it sounds a little bit more musical, and ultimately I'm lazy and it's quite a bit easier to pull that off. Now once we have that first part done, the slide up to 4, we're going to head back to our starting point, which was the 2nd fret on the G string. What we're going to do is, I like to use my 1st finger here. You can use your 2nd finger if you just want to keep that momentum. We're going to pluck that note and pull it off. And then land on the 2nd fret of the D string. And when we combine these two, it's going to sound like this. Now, once we have that part down, which is going to be the intro riff, you'll hear it quite a few times throughout the song. There are going to be 2 chords you need to know throughout the song as well, and that's going to be A7 and E7. A7 is going to be the first chord you play, and like your standard kind of A chord, it's going to be predominantly on the 2nd fret here. We're going to use 2 fingers. We're going to be fretting the 2nd fret of the D string and the 2nd fret of the B string. That chord sounds like this. Once we know that chord, we also need to know E7. So that's going to be, if you think about your standard E chord, E major, you're just going to lift up on your third finger. So you'll be fretting that second fret of the A string and the first fret of the G string here. That's going to sound like this. So once again. Now stylistically, these are played in a rhythmic fashion that's somewhat palm muted. It's going to sound a little bit like that. To me, it sounds like Teeny is palm muting the A7 and then opening up a little bit on the E7. And of course, he adds some embellishments on some of those higher register strings as well. So those are going to be the main two chords you need to play the rhythmic section throughout the verse. And it's just going to be those two. Once we have those down, we want to also talk about the horn lines, which are actually relatively easy to transpose to guitar. So let's take a look at that now. Great. So once we have the intro riff down and we're comfortable making those changes between the two main chords of the song, it's helpful to understand where the horn riff is coming from. If you want to replicate that on guitar, maybe use a synth pedal, or you want to explain how that goes to a keyboard player in your band. So from the guitar perspective, what that's going to sound like is we are going to start, it's a two-part riff, and each part is repeated twice. So the first part will start on the 9th fret here of the A string. We'll go to the 6th fret of the D string, 7th fret of the D string, 9th fret of the D string, and finish on the 6th fret of the G string. So it'll sound like this. Now the second part of this, you're staying in the same position, but we're going to start on the 7th fret of the A string. And I like to start this one with my second finger, my middle finger here. And that one is going to start with that 7th fret. We're going to go down to the 6th fret on the D string. And then we're going to walk it up by fret. 7th fret, 8th fret, 9th fret. You'll play both of those twice in a row. So that'll sound like this. And that'll head right back into the intro starter riff once that horn section is complete. Okay, if you want to grasp the solo for this song, there's not much to it, but there's a few things you're going to want to remember to either replicate it or get as close as you can. Maybe you can use these tips to more so make it your own. To me, it sounds like the start of the solo begins with a slide up to the 6th fret on the G string. From there, we'll go to the 5th fret of the B string, back to the 6th fret of the G, 5th fret of the B, and then we'll take that 7th fret and bend it up. So something like this. From there, the first section of the solo seems to end with the 3rd fret of the B string and an open E. And we slide that up to the 5th fret of the B string, so we get that octave. Now the second part of this solo is going to start actually on the 7th fret of the high E string. And what you're going to want to do is the next point we're going to go from there is going to be the 7th fret of the B string, but you're going to want to pre-bend into that. So there are a couple ways you can do it. It might be easy for you to use your second finger and your first two fingers to do that. I find it a little easier to use my pinky on the 7th fret of the E string and bend up with my third finger on the 7th fret of the B string. So that looks to me something like this. And then we're going to open it up to the 5th fret. So like this. I like to hybrid pick that with my middle finger. It's just a little easier. Little country sound there. From that 5th fret, we're going to go back up to the 6th fret on the G string here. We're going to slide back to the 4th, back up to the 6th, and land on that 5th fret on the B string. So something like this. And that'll take you through the solo. So this is the portion of the video where I'm going to go through a few tone tips and some hopefully helpful stylistic tips that might make it a little easier for you to get the feel of this song. I find it really helpful to practice with a metronome. I'm sure you can find the tempo or BPM for the song online. It's something above 100, I believe. And that makes it a little easier to have that click in your ear to really land on the right notes at the right time. Another thing, as mentioned earlier in the video, you can try to alternate pick all of these notes in the solos, the riffs, what have you, but I find it quite a bit easier to work on using my middle finger as a hybrid picking technique, more of like a country style guitar. That for me kind of made it so much easier to learn this song, and just kind of is the natural way I feel most comfortable in playing it. And tone-wise, if you want to try to nail Teenie Hodges' tone, he's been known to play a few different guitars. He's played, I think, some headless Steinbergers in the past, but around this time, I believe he was playing either a Strat or Tele, so something with single coils would be helpful for achieving that tone. I'm playing through a King Imperial Mk on the rhythm section, which is more of a blackface Fender clean sound. So that's a good option, is that kind of amp. Something that's a Fender style clean amp might be helpful. And then when you move to the solo section, to me, to my ears in the recorded version, it sounds like an overdriven tweed amp, maybe a Champ. Something with high compression, really punchy mid-range will do really well to nail that tone. Now, if you're trying to replicate the horn sounds, I don't do a lot of synthesizer work, so I couldn't tell you, but I know that Electro Harmonix and a few other pedal makers make some really cool organ-style guitar pedals that might be helpful for nailing that sound, but I'm sure there's a plethora of modulation options out there as well to help you really nail that sound. So I hope this was helpful for you. Thank you all for stopping by the channel. Hope you can take this song and play it out at your next gig and get some people dancing. And until next time,